What's up, wrestling fans? I'm Doug.
And I'm Kevin.
This is the True Bros Wrestling Show, post WrestleMania 36 edition. Let's jump into it, everybody. Kevin, this was some crazy. First of all, these are crazy, crazy times, and this was a crazy, crazy WrestleMania without a doubt.
You know, we knew in advance that it wasn't going to feel like WrestleMania, and it didn't. But at the same time, kudos to the men and women who worked really hard to put on an entertaining show. So if you're watching this to be spoiler averse to see whether or not you should even watch before we get into, how we did as far as who won. Yes, it was a good diversion for two nights. There was a couple of moments that are definitely going to be probably part of WrestleMania highlight films from here on out. Worth your time.
Absolutely, absolutely worth your time. Just a shout out to all those men and women who did the work, because nobody on the card either night phoned it in. They wrestled like they were wrestling in front of 80,000 people in an arena and millions watching at home. So, well done to each and every one of them.
And you want to let's get into how we did?
Sure, let's dive into it. Well, the main card, first off, a nod to Drew Gulak and Cesaro going out on the pre-show on the first night, and Cesaro coming up with the win there. I don't think either one of us had that opening bout.
They hadn't even talked about it, so that was one that we didn't make a prediction on. But it was quick. There wasn't a whole lot to it, but they set the tone. I'm digging Gulak as a more serious player, and they had a quick little harmless contest for the pre-show.
And Cesaro always delivers. But getting into the main show, we had the women's tag up first with the Kabuki Warriors, the champion Kabuki Warriors, defending against Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. And I believe we both called this one for Bliss and Cross.
We did, and it was a nice high-energy opener, and we kind of saw the way it should go, and I honestly think that's the way it should have gone, and they set a good pace for the opening night of WrestleMania, I thought.
Agreed, and I've got to say, just two matches in at this point with the pre-show and the women's tag match, the selling in an open, an empty arena like that really comes across so much more. And and the ring, there's just so much more verbiage or verbalization, I guess, in the ring. Then it made for a really interesting show as the night went on. But moving along, we had what was probably a highlight for both of us with our King Corbin versus Elias. I know we were both waiting with bated breath for that one, and I think we both called that one wrong, didn't we?
Actually, we did get that one wrong. Elias went over. Who would have thought? He has apparently theme music, and it actually got played. So, I think that what you said the other day was who cares when I asked you about who wins. And to that end, it kind of met expectations. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't great. It was just there. And in the end, who really cared? So, a low light of night one.
Yeah, and speaking of lowlights of night one, we rolled right into the Raw's Women's Championship next, which, I guess, the outcome of this really plays to rumors I'd been reading about online that Vince had super cooled on Baszler, and her performance at the Elimination Chamber was a Heyman push to just show what an incredible beast she was going to be, but that didn't go too far. I mean, this was one of the shorter matches of the entire of both nights, if you don't count the main cards where you have the main championships on the line for the men. But for this Raw Women's Championship, this was a short match and did not deliver what I expected at all, with Becky Lynch coming up with the win.
Because of the way this was filmed, where they could do things in advance with a pre-tape and then decide the order, first thing I thought was, man, it's strange that this is going on so early. I expected this to be the main event of night one. When it wasn't, and then the match itself played out as it did, I understood why they probably moved it down to where they had it moved down, because not only was the outcome, in my opinion, incorrect, the match itself, I mean, it was hard hitting. What was there was good. It never got to great. And then all that time building up Baszler and to not pay off, I think the champ would have had a better post-Mania had she lost a little something and then had to figure her way back out of that and fight for something else again. And now it's like, okay, who is going to challenge? That is a legitimate challenge. Where do they go from here? Just weird booking, weird placement, under delivering, and we both got it wrong. So maybe we're just bitter.
Maybe we are bitter old wrestling fans, but I don't think we got that one wrong. I think the booking on that one was wrong, because Baszler could have been an amazing monster of a heel women's champion. And you're right. Then Becky would have had. I imagined her being off TV for some time, and then because that match would be so brutal. But I guess really all we've done now is pave the way for a Ronda Rousey return, so that which will probably take place at SummerSlam if we can get into arenas by then. But
in the interim, they very well may play this one again. That might be one of the reasons why it went so early. And they did have that leverage pin, which is kind of the cheap way out of, like, well, it wasn't like a clear dominant victory. You just kind of snuck one by, so it could extend this feud for another pay-per-view.
Yeah, I think Baszler has suddenly fallen into the same realm as Ricochet of, a super hot talent that, the powers that be in the WWE have just cooled on almost immediately, and we're going to probably see Baszler in some B team type roles moving forward. I think she's had her moment in the sun, and unfortunately, she's just going to be backdressing backdrop now.
I hope not.
I hope I'm wrong too. But moving on, Intercontinental Championship: Sami Zayn, Daniel Bryan.
Speaking about being wrong, I was wrong. You were right. We were both probably wrong in thinking that this might be the show stealer. I don't feel like it made it to that second gear.
No.
It wasn't a bad contest by any means, because really, for the most part, they played into the Sami Zayn being a chicken type character, which definitely fits the character, but it didn't deliver the Matt Classic that we knew it could be. But maybe there's more life in this feud too. Sami does pick up the win, which you called correctly. No title change. He holds on to the Intercontinental belt.
I think there's a lot of mileage that Sami can get out of this character, and especially his antics that he had going on, but it would have been so much better in front of a live crowd. But, I mean, things being what they are, again, kudos to everybody involved, because they all played their roles and gave 100% with this one.
I will say that without that live crowd, talk about verbalization, those brutal kicks and strikes that Bryan delivered really echo and sound awful in an empty arena. I mean, yes. I was hurting here at the house every time he made that flesh, hitting flesh noise. Was, man, stiff. It was very stiffly worked.
Very stiff.
More to come, because I know there's more in them.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving along, we had the SmackDown Tag Team Champions being defended by John Morrison alone. Against Kofi Kingston and Jimmy Uso in a ladder match. I think we talked about this in our pre-show, because you weren't aware that The Miz had showed up to the taping sick. And, apparently WWE really forgot to mention that until right before the match, even though it was all over the internet for like a week or so ahead of time.
Depending on how far in advance SmackDown had been taped, maybe they just couldn't figure out a good way to put it in the show to make it like, storyline driven. But,
just like they did that
oddity of like tag team titles being defended in a way that was no longer containing any tag teams, which is odd. But the match itself was one of the highlights of night one, and actually one of the highlights of the whole weekend.
Absolutely.
All three guys were fantastic in this. Especially, and this is no slight on Jimmy Uso, who was good in his role, but man, Kofi and Morrison both just worked their tails off. That Starship Pain on the elevated ladder in the corner was maybe the spot of the weekend. And then, of course, Morrison does the whole tight walk a tightrope walk from one ring post to the other. And then Kofi had some incredibly off the chart athleticism too, like the between the ladder spot when he drop kicked the two guys on that rebound off the top rope. Just some incredible moves.
I agree. It was all around. It was great. Morrison came out on top. Like I said he would. I think we both called that. Ms. Morrison would come out of this the winner. But it was definitely again, these guys were running the ring like they were in front of 80,000 people. It was really, really great.
And the innovative ending I liked too. I mean, they all three had a good shot at winning, and I'd never seen the hook come down before with the belt still attached. So to watch them tug of war on that off the ladders, Morrison just basically getting the short end of the stick, but holding onto the belt as he fell.
And I mean, I know it's WWE WrestleMania booking, but when did that become a thing? When the person that comes down with the belts wins the belts? I guess when three men from three different teams all grab it at the same time, but
you got to get him off the hook.
Yeah.
And he came down with the hook, so then he got him off. So I guess technically. But hey, it's a tag team title victory by a singles performer. So who are we to quibble about what the rules actually are, right?
Right. And I believe there were some shenanigans with the 24/7 championship. And I'm just going to blow right over it and get on to the Owens versus Rollins match next, because
as I watched that, I realized that in our pre-show, not only obviously those aren't advance bookings as far as matches being announced, but I realized that we said nothing about Gronk hosting, which I think was good on our part. So let's say nothing about him now.
Gronk sounds like a drunken orc or maybe a drunken troll,
Maybe if anyone cared about football, they, in addition to professional wrestling, maybe it means something in general. Even people I don't care to see in the world of professional wrestling. So yeah, he added nothing to the two nights. So
absolutely nothing. But his name does indeed sound like a drunken troll or a drunken orc you'd run into in a medieval bar setting. But anyway, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens. Wow.
Okay. This is one where you got it right. And I think I had Rollins coming out, and you had Owens. Rollins picked up the victory. I would give this match night one. It gets my choice for the best one and night one, and maybe even the best of the whole weekend. I don't know. It's pretty close, but their contest was phenomenal.
From a wrestling standpoint, absolutely. I mean, my favorite goes to something else that was on the card night 2. But from a wrestling standpoint, this was definitely an amazing match. And I think Owens has the spot of the weekend coming off the WrestleMania side.
When I prefaced earlier that there were a few moments that, will be in those Mania highlight reels, that's one, crowd or no crowd. The visual looked fantastic, and they will be playing that one over and over. Also, kudos, I would have to say, for that brutal Falcon arrow early on in the match that was on the ring apron. That looked phenomenal. Very fast moving. At first, I had in my notes here that it was a cheap, disappointing finish because I thought it was the finish, and they had to mark it out because they did the fake ending there. But once they went to that swerve, it was just straight on 90 miles an hour by both guys, never let up. You talked about verbalization. This was the night. This was the first match where I really noticed that to the extreme. The trash talking between these two during the match was a really effective way for making up for the lack of a crowd, and really added to the real feeling animosity of the contest.
Agreed. So next up, the Universal Championship with Goldberg and the replacement Braun Strowman, which I should have known going into this. WWE booking, the replacement always wins, but I went against that because I really expected this to be honestly filler. I expected Spear, Jackhammer, done to put over Goldberg as a beast, keep the belt on him until Reigns feels comfortable in the current situation we're in, or the situation clears up, and probably something at WrestleMania could happen then with these two. But we didn't get that. We did not get that at all.
No, what we got is your new champion is Braun Strowman, and you and I both missed that one. I think I said in our pre-show that, arguing the opposite side of what I would end up predicting, I said that there was a chance that, Goldberg had a certain number of dates and he was just going to be working through Mania and he'd be done. And maybe that's what happened here as part of that. There's obviously more money in Braun moving forward than a part-time wrestler, but I thought that there was an opportunity for Goldberg to hold on for a little bit. I mean, I think that Reigns would have gained more out of adding Goldberg to his list of legends that he's defeated than Strowman will, but let's see where it goes. The match itself, not good, quick, as was expected.
Right.
Just the outcome that either of us predicted. Actually, more Braun Strowman dominance than I expected in the match too, to be perfectly honest with you.
Mm-hmm. But, we, like you say, we have a new champion, but then moving on, now we both know what a boneyard match is, and my God, I want more boneyard matches.
Okay. We know what a boneyard match is, but is it like anything than a buried alive match? Because ultimately that's what decided it anyway. I'm like, they've done a lot of buried alive matches throughout this Undertaker's gimmick over the decades, and they basically did a very cinematic version of a buried alive match and just called it something else.
That's because of the cinema aspect. Absolutely.
That's something they did go. We should maybe mention is that up to this match, which main evented night one, everything had been in the performance center, in the empty performance center. And I will say that for both nights, that we've seen the empty performance center so often now through SmackDown and Raw that by the time the main event hit, I was ready for something different. There is a sameness that starts to creep into the contest because the setting is the same and it doesn't have the big scale of WrestleMania and it looks just like your average Raw or SmackDown. So this definitely was like, a good palate cleanser. However, I don't know. Is it a wrestling match?
Well, here's the thing. I'm not a fan of this type of, I shouldn't say I'm not a fan of it. I wasn't a fan of this type of thing. This reminds me of more like hardcore kind of, anything goes kind of wrestling. I like my wrestling confined to a ring with people doing their flippy jumps and all their aerial acrobatics and things like that. That's the wrestling I really love. But this was so damn entertaining. We got to see
typically without druids, to be perfectly It was not my cup of tea, but was it entertaining? Yes. Was it a wrestling match?
Absolutely not. No, it was not.
But I give it a little more slack than I normally would with these sorts of things because of the current circumstances we're in. When it calls for something different, for what it was. Again, not my cup of tea. Some people love the Broken Hardy stuff. Some people, and all the. For me, not my cup of tea. But as far as that kind of stuff goes, this is about as good as I'd ever seen it done.
I agree. My nephew had texted me while this match was on, talking about how, matches like this, we can get 10 more years of Taker. Shout out to you, T Money. I don't know if we can get 10 more years out of him like this, but we can definitely get a few more. If we do more boneyard matches with the Underbiker, as I lovingly refer to him, if we get more matches like this out of the American Badass, we can probably go and stretch a career a little bit longer. But, I really think it goes to the opponent, because I would have loved to have seen what AJ Styles and The Undertaker could have done in a ring, but this was perfect for what it was. This was great.
In a ring would be preferred, but only with the crowd. Without the crowd, this was a very effective way to change the pace of what will be a long 2 nights of a very same looking product. And again, not my cup of tea, but kudos to them for doing it. And I'm glad you mentioned the Underbiker, because it was certainly not the dead man that most of us expected to show up to a boneyard. The rolling in on the bike was an effective way to show, okay, we're getting the other version of Undertaker tonight.
Yeah, I just love the whole trash talking Undertaker in this. Kind of reminded me of my dad a little bit, the grumpy old man. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I've seen the Underdad there from Big Doug.
So I just loved everything that this was. And then AJ doing the "Don't bury me." Is he talking to Undertaker? Or was he talking to the powers that be at that point? Oh,
good job by Alan.
Absolutely, Alan pulled it off. It was amazing. So jumping to night two, looks like
I too.
we had another kickoff match between some ladies, Liv Morgan and Natty Natalia, and it looks like Liv came up with the win there. Again, another one that wasn't really announced, that we didn't really make a call on it. But again, kudos to these ladies and these guys for everything they did the entire weekend, because they were wrestling like they were wrestling WrestleMania. Everybody put their all into it.
And it filled its spot as a opener and did little more than what it was supposed to do. But Liv is, I think there's money in her, so hopefully the win over an established hand like Natalia means some good booking for her coming out of Mania. But let's get to the main show.
So I was shocked that this kicked off the show. The first night we had, women kicking off the show. Second night we have the NXT Women's Championship kicking off the show. And I was a little concerned that was going on first, because I'd already read coming out of night one that the matches were in a way, because Vince had seen everything after it was pre-taped to get an advantage to having it pre-taped, and he picked the matches based on on what he liked and what he saw. So you had his least favorite going all the way up to the most favorite. So I was wondering if that was the case with night two as well. But I mean, if this was his least favorite, what the hell, dude? I mean, other than the finish, which I wasn't happy with, the psychology in this match was great. My goodness, Charlotte working the legs like she did, and these girls were hitting hard.
This was if it wasn't Owens and Rollins from night one, this was my favorite match of the weekend, and it was the opener. And maybe it has nothing to do with what he thought was the least effective match. Right. Maybe they wanted a hot opener and they realized that this was the hot opener, and getting the NXT match on first, because like you said, it was classic Flair psychology, working that leg to build up for the figure four into the figure eight,
and the figure eight, and Ripley. Yeah, I mean, it was perfect. It was a perfect story told in the ring, just from start to finish, the way it all worked. It was just great.
Except for perhaps the booking decision of how it ended. I mean, and we both missed it, but Flair is Flair, and I'm interested to see what they do with her, and they have a big star on the NXT brand, and that could produce for some interesting TV going down the road. However, I don't know if that's the way you were going to go, why you would do what you have done to build her up, to build up Rhea Ripley as this next big thing, and only to have her lose to someone who doesn't need a victory to be the top of any division she's in. So other than the questionable booking decision, one incredible match, and one of three that I would suggest, if you're just watching parts of this weekend, that you definitely go check out.
Right. I agree. And then we go into a match to kind of cool things off, I think. I mean, Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley. I have no idea. This was just thrown together, as far as I can tell. It just hey, here, let's get you on WrestleMania.
We got it right, and that Aleister Black went over. So what I put in my notes is the right outcome, just a bland match.
Yeah, I agree. And again, no, not calling out either one of these guys, because we know Bobby Lashley can be a beast, walking Armageddon. He can be a beast, and Black is one of my favorites. So I just was confused by this match altogether, but it is what it is. Black gets a victory. Hopefully he gets a rocket strapped to his back soon, because he certainly deserves it. But moving on to something to cool off everybody even a little bit more, and just kind of get that comedy element in there with a bit of the feel good attitude that comes with WrestleMania. We had the Otis versus Ziggler match. Now, I had said, I expected the shenanigans and everything to come down at WrestleMania, but they kind of swerved me there and let the cat out of the bag at SmackDown prior to WrestleMania, where we finally find out that Sonya Deville was the one who sent Otis the text and was working with Dolph. So Mandy Rose finds all this out on SmackDown instead. So I fully expected, Mandy coming to the ring at some point to aid Otis, since Sonya and Dolph came out together.
Yeah, it was the right outcome, in that this has been a very long story as far as building up that Otis was an admirer of Mandy's for years, and even the Ziggler part of it, over the last couple of months has been well done for what it is. Unlike the Boneyard kind of thing, which isn't my cup of tea, in small doses, I can handle the comic relief part of like professional wrestling. And this is one, though, that would have definitely benefited from a crowd more so than the others, because this was never going to be a 5-star classic mat contest. It was all about the storyline, and they successfully pulled off the storyline, and it probably would have gone over tremendous with Otis, grasping Mandy up in his arms and giving her the kiss. All that would have gone over like Busters in front of 80,000 people. They would have ate that up. But as it was just kind of like, yeah. But again, right outcome. They completed the story. They told it well, and we got it right.
We got it right. Absolutely.
That would have really been weird booking it and not gone that way.
It would have been very bizarre booking it, and I think there were some bizarre booking choices. I mean, clearly I'm not a booker for WWE, but it's not how I would have booked it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not how you would have booked it, but if it went the other way anyway. But moving on, Edge versus
Last Man Standing.
Man, this Last Man Standing. Wow. Other than there came a point in this where I was uncomfortable because it had went on so long, and it almost became like distracting because we were getting a tour of the Performance Center while two guys beat the crap out of each other.
That's the most we've ever seen of the Performance Center. Although I will say, just like to stipulate before we get further into all of that, like the beginning of the match, I do have an issue. Come on, Edge. There's like 4 people in the entire arena, and you don't notice that one of them there happens to be your opponent as a cameraman. That's believable if there's 80,000 people out there. You might not notice the cameraman is actually your opponent, but I digress.
Come on, man. He's been out of the game for a while. I mean, it's been, 9 years?
It was a very hard-hitting contest.
Yes.
I do question maybe the length. It might have been a little too long. I will say that, and I'm going to have my cake and eat it too here, because I'm going to say 2 contradictory things. But I think that you really notice a lack of a crowd during Last Man Standing matches. Last Man Standing matches have a difficult time compared to your normal match, because a 10 count seems like it takes forever compared to a 3 count when there's not a crowd reacting, urging their guy to get up, counting along. When it's just that slow count to 10, after a while it started to be like, wow, how long is this going on? Mm-hmm. When they moved to the backstage area, however, I thought it picked up only because we've seen so many backstage brawls through the years. And so you're not used to the audience there. So for that part of the contest, it actually, to me, I was able to forget the current situation that we're in and just enjoy, like, okay, they're fighting backstage now. And I wasn't so focused on the lack of a crowd. So that part of it was good.
See, I got a little distracted by the backstage area, especially like the room with the big table, which I'm assuming is like a conference room, maybe a writer's room or something. Because I just, I just started wondering, is the part of the cage suspended from the ceiling, is that like a decorative fixture, or is that something that they actually just gimmicked for that particular spot? And then I started looking for other things.
I have a cage in the top of my office,
I know my office is too small for a cage, so. Although I have a huge window and a great view, but no cage suspended from the ceiling. But I mean,
elbows from the ceiling. How about that? Then?
It's just It got a little distracting at that point, because I started playing this game of like find the next spot. Why are those road cases suspended already on a forklift? Why are they raised up to a certain height? Okay, and then I figure out later, okay, because so Edge can go from truck bed to road case to the back of, to the top of the production truck. But that took me out of it a little bit. But overall, my goodness, these 2 dudes beat the crap out of each other, and they told a really great story. And this is, I think I texted you, this is the point where I was texting you, talking about how the selling in the empty arena it really takes it to a next level, because the guy's just huffing and puffing and the trash talk going on between the 2 of them. And, this was a great match.
They worked hard. I think you might have liked it a little more than me. I liked it. I didn't love it. Maybe, and maybe this was just me. Another part that kind of took me out of it, and I'm sorry for even having to bring it up. I don't know that in the world of professional wrestling, if you ever need to go to weight machines and show one guy wrapping the cord around the neck of another guy.
True. Very, very, very true.
But they worked hard, and you can't fault the effort at all. So yes, kudos to both of them for, one being out for 9 years and the other not really wrestling full time. They definitely gave their all on the big stage.
Yeah, they definitely did. So next,
actually, I don't know if we've even mentioned Edge actually won that match.
Oh yes, Edge did win that match,
and we both got that right. We both put that one.
So next up, what do we have? The Raw Tag Team Championship match
with the champions, the Street Profits, and they retained over Angel Garza and Austin Theory. And I got this one right, and you went by your traditional, like what you ignored earlier with Strowman. You went with the replacements are going to win, and this time they didn't.
So I figured out it was 50-50 booking for me at that point, but I thought this would be a great swerve because, again, why take the belts off the Street Profits this early? But, I was wrong. I'll own this one. I made the call, and it was the wrong call. But I do think that, the Street Profits, the Street Profits won. That was great. And then we get to see Bianca Belair make her main roster debut, with her hubby Montez Ford. So that's good. And it looks definitely like we're getting a Zelina Vega a program with her now, too. So that's great.
I'd like to see Zelina in the ring more.
Yes.
She's really good in the ring, so this is a good, but the match where it didn't have a backstory, where it was a bunch of replacements, it was kept very short, which is good. The athleticism was fine because the four guys involved, but I think I would like to give kudos to Garza and Theory, even in the loss. These are two guys that just a couple of months ago, neither one of them were even in the mid card of NXT. These are lower NXT level or just introductory level in Austin Theory's case, NXT guys, and they get a shine at WrestleMania in just a few months' time. So kudos to them. But story of the match, like you said, is Bianca Belair making her main roster debut on WrestleMania, and I like her with the Street Profits. I'm hoping that that's actually a thing and not just she came to the aid of her husband. I hope that she stays part of the act and stays part of it. Looks like that's the way they're going, but we'll see.
Yeah. I do like her with the Street Profits. It's taken me a while to warm up to her, but I like where this is going. And anytime we can get Zelina Vega more actually in the ring, I want to see that too. So up next, we had the one I got wrong, but I thought Lacey Evans was actually going to pull this off. But, we had the Women's SmackDown Championship match with Bayley, Sasha Banks, Lacey Evans, Tamina, and Naomi. I'd called Naomi.
I got it wrong. We both got it wrong.
Yeah, because I had called Naomi to win this. I think the story of this match is still Sasha Bayley. It looks like we're going to get a slow burn breakup, which is great. I love the slow burn storytelling. But there came a point after Naomi was eliminated, it got down to Lacey and Bayley, and I was thinking, oh, okay, they still go this way, but they're gonna put the belt on Lacey instead of Naomi. But Sasha came to the aid of her bestie after being eliminated, and Bayley walked out with the championship.
And they've invested a lot in Lacey, so it was conceivable there at the end. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. They've really been playing up her patriotism, her single mother. I'm like, they can go with her as a character, and I thought that was the way it was going to go too. But I had picked Sasha Banks. I thought that there would be that dissension maybe at WrestleMania, and that she would backstab her friend to get the belt. I will say this: this is how little I've actually paid attention to this feud. I did not realize it was an elimination match until Tamina got pinned and the match kept going. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So it was a good contest. It was a lengthy contest because of the number of people that needed eliminated. They teased a breakup between Sasha and Bayley. I haven't been that high on Bayley, but now she is the longest reigning champion in all of WWE, and that reign continues since she retained her title. But I will say that this might be her most interesting feud she has coming up with, Sasha Banks obviously being teased as a opponent there. So it's actually oddly took this long in her reign for me to be somewhat interested in that reign. So we'll see where it goes.
So I'm right there with you. I didn't realize. I think they announced that like right before the match, if you blink or got up to grab a drink, you may have missed Mike. I think it was Michael Cole that was announcing that mentioned that it is an elimination match, because I don't think that was ever mentioned until the actual match,
I don't think so.
because I was up to that point, I was thinking this is one of those things Bayley can lose her belt based on not getting pinned. Well, she would have to got pinned to get eliminated, but I don't know. That was some WrestleMania booking there. So. But speaking of WrestleMania booking, next up we have John Cena versus The Fiend Bray Wyatt in a Firefly Funhouse match. And just like a Boneyard match, we now know what a Firefly Funhouse match is. And if we can get more Boneyard matches, that would be cool. But we must, absolutely positively, we must have more Firefly Funhouse matches. My goodness.
So Eric Bischoff won this one, right?
Or heel John Cena that was in NWO. I love that.
You have no idea if you missed this. There's no description that Doug and I are going to do, or no written description that you're going to read that will do justice to what this was. Now, this also wasn't wrestling. And I know I was harder than Doug was on the Boneyard match. Doug liked it. I didn't really so much care for it. I just sort of forgave it. This I liked. This was a vignette. It didn't even pretend really like it was a legitimate match or contest.
Absolutely.
I guess. And I can accept that a whole lot better in the context of a professional wrestling show than I can like the Boneyard match, where it is not a match, but that it's still somewhat competitive. This was an acid trip. This was Bray Wyatt's mind tricks into like John Cena in a fight with previous John Cenas. So he basically presented all the fraud John Cenas to himself, with, of course, John Cena, the actor, acting the role in what was just an extended vignette. Not a match, even though we both got the victor right, if you want to, give us credit for calling what wasn't a one-on-one actual contest. But again, there's an Eric Bischoff, there's an NWO, there's the Cena rapping, the Thugonomics, Word Life, and all that stuff. I mean, it was insane. It was insane.
It really was. If it's going to take multiple watchings, and I have watched it multiple times already. I pick up something a little bit different each time. We could do an entire hour on that match. I mean, we really could, because I mean, it comes down to a deconstruction of the character John Cena's career, especially when it shifts into the NWO of what could have been if Cena had actually turned heel, where Hogan turned heel, and all the comparisons to Cena Hogan throughout the years. Superman, there's a Nikki Bella stab in there.
I mean, love stab. I thought that was hilarious. And of course, the evil puppet Satan Vince McMahon. I don't know how they get away with that, but that cracks me up every time he's on the screen.
We had Macho. What's that?
I wonder how much input Bray has on that. I know he's really involved with his characters and his storylines. They give him a lot of leeway. Because of how good he is. But man, if a lot of that was his writing, his brainchild, that dude pulled off something pretty special.
He absolutely. And Cena, to go along with a very harsh criticism and deconstruction of himself, and to play it like he did, I mean, that goes on his highlight reel that he's passing around Hollywood right now. I mean,
I know Cena gets a hard time from a lot of folks. I know we probably would give him a hard time on occasion. He is not a bad performer in the ring. He's kind of can be stale on the mic sometimes, but I think sometimes, if anything, he's so overexposed that when he is good, can be underappreciated for when he was good. And this was one of those instances where Superman Cena, he took that whole thing that he gets criticism for and allowed himself to just be completely the pin in the balloon, and man, he went with it, and he played his part of that. I mean, it takes two to tango, and that wouldn't have worked without his full buy-in, and he was committed to it just as Ray was.
Absolutely.
Vignette, not a match, but definitely one of those things that you have to check out. You're going to love it. You're either going to love it or hate it or just be confounded by it, but you must see it. There's no way you cannot.
This is true. It is must-see wrestling. And then, to finish off night 2 of WrestleMania, we had our Brock Lesnar versus Drew McIntyre. This was exactly what I thought it would be. Lesnar. Yeah, Lesnar the Beast going in. McIntyre ended up slaying the Beast. You know,
it was short. There wasn't a lot to the match really, but there were some good moments in the match. Like no one was expecting they were going to go 20 minutes. And you know, but the F5s where you had the F5 and he kicks out at 1 after an F5, and then he hits the second F5 and he gets the 2. So by the time that third F5 come, you're like, well, 3 and he's down, and he kicked out. And so yeah, they played that part really well. At this point, anytime you beat Brock Lesnar cleanly at WrestleMania, whether there's a crowd or not, that still means a lot in the world of professional wrestling right now, because Lesnar is really the flagship for that bar. And to go over clean, it would have been nice to see this hero. I mean, because for those that don't know, the journey that they documented for Drew, his story is really beyond just what they started in January. They, from January, have told a microcosm of his whole WWE career. The guy who came in with all the expectations, they soured on him, ended up in a really bad gimmick. They ended up dropping him. The dude goes on to the independents, rebuilds his body, rebuilds his character, rebuilds his career, fights his way back to NXT, makes it to the main roster, out of nowhere wins the Royal Rumble, and then goes on and beats Brock Lesnar in the main event of WrestleMania. You and I both said in the pre-show that deserved to be done in front of 80,000 people.
Absolutely.
I do like the way, though, even though he couldn't have that, he looked straight into the camera and pointed at the camera, because that was where the audience was in this instance. And he thanked the camera and those watching personally, which I thought was a really nice touch. And kudos to a good guy getting what he deserved, what he worked really hard for.
So right before we got together, I was reading a bit on ESPN about him and him talking about that moment, because you know you can't Deadpool in the WWE. You cannot break that fourth wall. He broke that fourth wall just because he was just basking in his own glory of what he just done. He was Keith Leeing, but you know that he had actually won this, and then he realized, okay, yeah, there's nobody here watching, but there's everybody watching there. I need to acknowledge that I've done this. Instead of doing the raising the championship high and everything, he looked straight at the camera because he knew that's where everybody was. Yeah.
And I thought I hope that they got no heat for that and breaking that wall, because I thought that was the perfect way to acknowledge the moment and acknowledge the people watching in a way that would have been lost had you tried to celebrate as he would have liked to have been in front of a gigantic crowd. But it put a really personal, intimate touch on a situation where you couldn't have the big moment. And I thought it was a great end. Again, not the best match. It won't be the match that's remembered. It was fine. It served its purpose. It was hard hitting for why it was there, but it told the story of Drew, and I really look forward to seeing where they go with him as champion.
I do too. Overall, this WrestleMania, it's going to be remembered for for some reasons that are incredibly unpleasant with the thing the world is going through right now. But I think Stephanie McMahon really did hit on it both nights in her isolation chamber, wherever she was broadcasting from before the show, saying, you know, we're here to just, you know, take your mind off things and entertain you for a few hours. And they definitely did that. And one more time, kudos to everybody there, because nobody phoned it in. Everybody gave 110%, you know, just like they were in an arena full of 80,000 screaming fans and millions watching around the world.
If you're going to if you're not going to sit through the 6 hours, or I guess if you include the pre-show, the 8 hours worth, they did pretty good balancing out the 2 nights of, you know, memorable moments. But for me, check out Rollins and Owens in the ladder match on night 1. And then night 2, you must check out the NXT Women's Championship match, the funhouse for what that insanity that was. And at the very least, watch the main event to see Drew get that moment. But good. I mean, really, all you can expect under the circumstances, they delivered. So check it out. And I will say, Doug, you beat me, so congratulations.
So next paper,
I know that journalists should brag too much because of 16 contests. You got 10 of 16, and I got 9 of 16. So, you know, hey, we're pretty close, but apparently we're, you know, we need to be getting 13, 14 to feel like we really know what the booking is supposed to be. But overall, they threw us some curveballs, but that's fine too. We need those.
Absolutely. I am happy to be wrong because, maybe it'll take things in a different direction, things in an interesting direction. We'll see things we haven't seen before. I still question the putting a belt on Charlotte. She doesn't need that. Ripley could have had so much more heat going back to NXT as the NXT Women's Champion who's defeated, the Queen. And I really think something like that would have drew more eyes to NXT than, because I think the casual wrestling fan may still look as NXT as the minor leagues, and now Charlotte's basically going to the minor leagues.
All of these booking decisions, whether they're the ones we agreed with or the ones like that we didn't agree with, the key for any of them, even Drew that we did agree with, the key is always the follow-up, right?
Absolutely. So maybe next year we can get a Boneyard Firefly Funhouse match. I would love that.
My head would explode.
So would Titus O'Neil's. All right. Well, everybody, I've been Doug. That's been Kevin. This has been Wrestling Rambling, and we're going on almost 50 minutes. So
Till next week.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe.